Mr. Speaker, it has become clear that there is this enormous potential to increase tax revenue by bringing into the tax bracket transactions that could be best defined as being undertaken in the informal economy. After considerable deliberation, government has decided to place a levy on all electronic transactions to widen the tax net and rope in the informal sector. This shall be known as the Electronic Transaction Levy or e-levy. Electronic mobile money payments, bank transfers, merchant payments, and e-mode remittances will be charged at an applicable rate of 1.75%, which shall be borne by the sender, except e-mode remittances, which will be borne by the recipient. Mr. Speaker, to safeguard efforts being made to enhance financial inclusion and protect the vulnerable, all transactions that add up to 100 Ghana cedis or less per day, which is approximately 3,000 Ghana cedis per month, will be exempt from this levy. A portion of the proceeds from the e-levy will be used to support entrepreneurship, youth employment, cybersecurity, infrastructure, among others. Mr. Speaker, taxi.
From Parliament right now, and I'm grateful to have with me.
Now, we should be doing about 25% of GDP coming into the national kitty as domestic resources so that you can have a 5% deficit cap and still have enough resources to fund roads, medical projects across the country, education, our security needs which are growing by the day, etc. We're only doing about 14% of GDP. That means that when the GDP is being generated, but about 10–11% of it is not coming to the national kitty. And one of the reasons is that there's a bit of inequity and inefficiency in some of the revenue handles. So, for example, you ask ourselves, how are you funding roads? So there's a bit of road tolls and then a bit of financing that goes into the road fund. If the road fund is getting, let's say, about 2 billion cedis a year, of which road tolls are contributing just about 78 million Ghana cedis. And if you have IPCs from contractors today, about 8 billion cedis on the table, and maybe another 8 billion cedis to completion, that's about 16 billion. There's no way 2 billion can pay 16 billion. So you ask yourself, is that efficient? Can we find another way of raising that same resource for the development of roads in a manner that is efficient, in a manner that is equitable? Take, for example, road tolls. So in Accra, for example, unless you are going to Tema or through, I think, Michel Camp, or through Kaswa or Pokwase or Ebri, you don't pay. Take, for example, the thousands of us who are living in East Legon. Our roads are being asphalted. Maybe our offices are in central Accra or in Dansuman. It means that we will not be contributing to the need to fix all the roads in other parts of the country, including my constituency. So how do we find a more equitable way if only about 30% of vehicles are contributing to the tolling system? And that is the kind of change that you see us try and move from, and move to an area where we can have everybody paying something, not necessarily something too high, but everybody paying something, a more efficient mechanism for collecting that money, and at the same time, a mechanism that protects the poor and the vulnerable. And I think
the 2022 budget statement and economic policy had a theme: building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation, fiscal consolidation, and job creation. This meant that it is supposed to create an economic environment conducive enough to enable businesses, especially startups and entrepreneurs, to thrive. In a jiffy, I'll be speaking to an entrepreneur to understand what this particular budget means to him and his business. This is Kofi Asamoah, a young businessman who has invested in the sachet water business in Kumasi when he moved back from his base in the United States of America. He was hopeful of a reduction in fuel prices because of the impact on his business.
We deal in production and transportation, So it does really affect our business because as I said a couple of weeks ago, we were buying about close to 2,000 for a week. Now we are doing almost 3,000. But then the products, we are still selling at the same price. We're looking for some reliefs so it can reduce our operational cost or expenditure, but nothing came up, and I'm really, really disappointed.
Among the few revelations from the budget was the introduction of the 1.75 levy on Momo and other electronic transactions. Mr. Samoa is worried this will affect his operations.
Now it looks like we have to resort to cash and checks because we are going to have to pay extra when we do electronic transactions. I do Momo transaction like 5,000 a day, close to 10,000 at some point. So I'm going to pay 1.75 or a levy on it. I'm going to save money, especially if I'm paying too much for fuel already, and there's already other taxes going on with it. So I think it defeats the idea of promoting electronic transactions per the vice president's digital whatever that he's trying to do. It's actually going to make me not do electronic transactions.
So 1 billion Ghana cedis every year for a period of 3 years meant to boost and capitalize the SME startup ecosystem. That's under the new initiative, the You Start initiative announced by the finance minister during the budget presentation. But already there are concerns about access to funds from initiatives like this.
It's huge as a policy to try to empower entrepreneurs. However, how to access the money, it's a problem. Because most of these things, when the government structures something, it's going to be politically motivated. If you are not part of the government or know somebody in government, you will not be able to access these facilities. Talking to the banks to increase portfolio for SMEs, yes, good policy, fantastic. However, if you give me 1 million cedis and you expect me to pay that money in a year, how am I going to pay you? If you give me 100,000 cedis for me to pay in a year, you're taking almost 11,700 a month. So I can complete the payment in a year. How am I going to pay it? So those are some of the things they should look at.
With a staff of more than 20 people, he is unable to increase their salaries due to the continuous rise in operational costs.
Employees are looking for increments in wages or salaries, and we are not able to do it because there is increment in fuel prices. We have not been able to increase prices of products because we're looking at it's a product that basically goes with the people who can afford luxury. So it's not something that you can really increase prices easily. It's just going to reduce the profit margin. And I'm ready to bear it because my employees they're not supposed to be responsible for that.
The 2022 budget has benchmark values abolished, road tolls scrapped, and withholding taxes reduced to 1.5%. Are these positive enough for business owners like Kofi Samoa?
It's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Put a lot of taxes on fuel, and then you decide to reduce the tax on withholding tax. Individually, it's good that there has been a reduction, but generally, it's still the same.
Kofi is among the many Ghanaian businesses who had expected more in the 2022 budget. Prince Apia reporting.
Bless Nyama.
22-year-old God bless Nyama loves gari and beans. That is his go-to meal every day before the day ends. A day without eating this food means he has to spend more.
And beans is one of my favorite foods. With 4 cedis, I'll get satisfied and it can keep me for the whole day.
His daily budget has been affected due to the price increase of his favorite meal. As a student, the meal sustains him through the day at a minimal cost, but the situation is different now.
With 4 cedis, I used to get satisfied. It could sustain me to the rest of the day. But now it's either I go for a second round or I increase the amount that I'm going to buy.
Efia Mansa carefully pounds this quantity of beans in a mortar. This activity is to easily separate chaff from the beans properly before she cooks it. She then pours the beans on a perforated wooden tray, rubs her hands on the beans to get rid of the chaffs. This is meant for her gobe food joint at Eija in Kumasi. Though a sack of beans is expensive, Mansa complains the sack is full of chaffs.
You can see that the beans is full of chaffs. Our customers get angry when we refuse to sell the beans at 1 cedis.
Just like other gobe sellers, she has increased the price of her beans to stay in business.
Beans to 1 cedi 50 pesos. I'm unable to make enough profits. Beans in retail are often sold in locally measured cups, container bowls, and sometimes bags for wholesale. A cup of beans in the Kumasi Central Market was sold at 2 cedis 50 pesos between January and September, but it has suddenly shot up to 5 Ghana cedis per cup.
Alhaji Baba is an importer of the staple food. He attributes the increase to the safer and high cost of fertilizer prices.
Beans no ni bebere free France country ena eba. France country e free bano. Safer na ya de kofa. Ebi fu Burkina, ebi free Niger. Ente safer no akosoro sama. Yakofa.
We import most of the beans from French countries, but the safer keeps increasing. Now most of the importers are unable to buy the beans.
Meanwhile, Baba's customer, Comfort, says she is unable to buy beans in large quantities due to the high price coupled with increase in fuel prices.
First, ukita 20 million out in Fanema. Now, so a few way dear. No kure ni ukita 20 million. What are beans I bag me?
I can only afford to buy 2 bags of beans with an amount of 2,000 Ghana cedis.
Well, it is evident that until the Ghana cedi stops depreciating and fuel prices are reduced, food prices will still keep going high. Anita Sewa Ajoga's report read to you.
The 2022 budget statement and economic policy had a theme: building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation, fiscal consolidation, and job creation. This meant that it is supposed to create an economic environment conducive enough to enable businesses, especially startups and entrepreneurs, to thrive. In a jiffy, I'll be speaking to an entrepreneur to understand what this particular budget means to him and his business. This is Kofia Samoa, a young businessman who has invested in a sachet water business in Kumasi when he moved back from his base in the United States of America. He was hopeful of a reduction in fuel prices because of the impact on his business.
We deal in production and transportation, so it does really affect our business because, as I said a couple of weeks ago, we were buying about close to 2,000 for a week. Now we are doing almost 3,000. But then the products, we are still selling at the same price. We're looking for some reliefs so it can reduce our operational cost or expenditure, but nothing came up, and I'm really disappointed.
Among the few revelations from the budget was the introduction of the 1.75 levy on Momo and other electronic transactions. Mr. Samoa is worried this will affect his operations.
Now it looks like we have to resort to cash and checks because we are going to have to pay extra when we do electronic transactions. I do Momo transaction like 5,000 a day, close to 10,000 at some point. So I'm going to pay 1.75 or a levy on it. I'm going to save money, especially.
Thank you very much for joining us for another edition of Decision Point on Love 99.5. My name is Untitled Jantuah. Wherever you are, I want to welcome you to Tonight's edition, I'm sure it's going to be great because that's a day after the budget was read. Reactions, counter reactions from people, some disappointed, some understandably talking about government being strategic because that's the best way to go. But from various devices, it does appear many Ghanaians might be expressing different or varied views about how they see the budgets and how they expect the budget to affect their daily living. Tonight on the show, we want to understand whether the way government decide to raise revenues might be a lazy man approach or very strategic. We will do some comparative analysis. We'll do some forecasting for us to really appreciate where we are. Now, I am sure, and I know you know, that from January 1, transactions on mobile monies will be taxed. Some are happy, some are not happy. The issue of the toll booths, well, to the drivers, they say it's going to ease traffic. But remember, we have many informal sectors who rely on traffic situation to cash in. Interestingly, nobody would want to experience traffic. But in that part of our country, we know that the traffic situation also creating employment for certain people. So yes, the toll booth will be off. No more collection of levies at the toll booth. But many hands or many mouths will be affected. And some are talking. According to IMF, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals requires a massive increase in investment over the next decade. In fact, we are projecting over 8.2% of national GDP. That's a tall order. So for low-income countries, which Ghana is no exception, of course they call us lower middle income country, 1/2 of the poorest countries eligible to borrow from World Bank, is likely. We normally want to rely on IMF or World Bank for monies. Now, many recognize that just borrowing may not be enough. So sometimes you are forced to look within to raise revenues for the country. Now, let's be fair. Ghanaians were not happy with some taxes that were leveled under John Dramani Mahama. In fact, John Mahama was defending why it was necessary to, put more burden on Ghanaians because that's the way to raise revenues for developmental agenda. But people say, no, you should not be doing that. Some of them are nuisance. So we are aware in 2017, the first budget that was read by this government, which they termed as Empower budget, many taxes were removed, which they termed nuisance. So Ghanaians were happy. But fast forward, we are facing certain realities that government itself is resorting to imposing certain taxes. To them, it is not nuisance, but to us, it is boring because nobody wants to pay tax. But it is also true that few people are paying income tax. I just want to make it more pronounced. Income tax. Because the argument that Ghanaians do not pay tax is a less of an argument. Ghanaians do pay tax. But yes, many Ghanaians pay indirect taxes. But for income taxes, few pay. So government was looking at widening the tax net. But let me ask you, every day you wake up and you call media houses admonishing and giving government ultimatums to ensure that your roads are fixed, infrastructures are done, making sure that your welfare is taken into consideration. But I ask, how do you expect the government to raise revenues? Well, we all complain of excessive borrowing. We know that this government has borrowed more than any government in the history of Ghana. But we all complain. So government says that, well, looking at mobile money transaction, it appears people are using those platforms. So if I decide to tax it, I'll be able to raise revenues for road construction and other important developmental projects. Is that not a good idea? Or you still think that government is being lazy? Or you feel that, well, this is strategic. But what's the big deal? It is a big deal because this government in opposition said a lot. And I want to go back by playing some of the things that they said in opposition. This is candidate, vice presidential candidate of the MPP, Dr. Bawumia, in 2016 speaking in our studios on Joy FM. We can listen to him and then we can play other excerpts and we'll give you the chance to decide. This is Decision Point.
The goal that we are going to try to do, the most people-friendly and the most business-friendly. The tax issue is a major issue because if you are so, fixated on revenue, you will essentially end up hurting your production. And so if you go back into history, you study the economic history of United States, Germany, England, all of them have used the tax policy to encourage production. And this is why we are saying that, today you have a situation in Ghana, unbelievable situation, when businesses are out on strike. Businesses who should be selling are out on strike. Why are they out on strike? Because they've been overburdened by taxes, and if you don't take care, you'll be chasing the tax revenue and killing businesses. And when you kill businesses, it means you are causing unemployment. And so if you go back, this is why Nana Akufo-Addo is saying, we need to mobilize financial resources. So why are you going to be imposing VAT on financial services? It doesn't make sense in a country which has got a very large unbanked population and we want people to bank. We will abolish that, he says. We will abolish import duty on all raw materials, because that has been a policy that will help production. Let the businesses produce. Let them make profit. And when they make profit and employ people, we will get income taxes and we will get corporate taxes. So you don't go ahead to kill the business. No, let them bring in the raw materials. Let them produce. Then you will tax, at the end of the day. And so our approach, and this is why we are going to bring down corporate taxes, we'll put incentives for real estate, tax incentives for the real estate sector, the special import levy on imports, the 1 to 2%, we will abolish it. And this.
So this was the voice of Dr. Bawumia, then the vice presidential candidate of the MPP. Now in 2016, 1st of December 2016, it had left 6 days for us to go into the polls. Now, this was what Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo said, that if you are tired of high tax rates, vote Akufo-Addo. 1st of December 2016. This was what Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo said, then candidate. If you are tired of high tax rates, vote Akufo-Addo. We can also listen to Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia speaking of a certain vision when they are given the nod. He talked about the MPP shifting the focus from taxation to production. Let's listen to him.
The MPP will shift the focus of economic policy away from taxation to production. So we are going to move away from taxation to production. From taxation to production. The MPP will shift the focus of economic policy away from taxation to production. So we are going to move away from taxation to production. From taxation to production.
That was what he told Ghanaians. Now, Dr. Baumia, in 2018, February 1, said that you do not need to borrow for road construction, but there is a way out. And what was the way?
We don't have to borrow money from anywhere. Just toll the various sections of the road and we'll raise the money to do the roads in Ghana. We don't have to borrow money from anywhere. Just toll the various sections of the road and we'll raise the money to do the roads in Ghana.
So, road toll was something that was strategic, according to Vice President, that once we look at the strategy well, we did not need to borrow. But remember, this government had gone for $2 billion Sino-Handle deal. I know that they've not received all the monies, but I thought that they said the toll booths, once you are strategic and you monitor it well, obviously we are going to get more for road construction. Let's listen to Information Minister KWADWO Jantuah telling Ghanaians to be expectant of everything, including government borrowing, ahead of the budget presentation.
And more importantly, should be more equitable. I mean, if only about 30% of vehicles are contributing to road tolls. And for example, Accra, look at the population dynamics in Accra. For Accra, it's just Temamoto Way, or when you are going to Akosombo, or to Aplao, or to Takrade or Ebri or Pokwase. These are the only places where you pay. But look at the population density in Accra and the vehicles in Accra. And look at the other parts of the country that also need roads, many of which roads we are not able to toll and take any money from. So you have to ask yourself, is this efficient? Can you find another way of maybe swapping for another mechanism of mobilizing that same money, but in a more efficient manner? And that is the balance that you have to see the finance minister work. The important thing is that we do it in a way that doesn't make poor people worse off.
Okay. KWADWO Jantuah is the information minister, and on and on and on we move. Let's listen to Eugene Osei-Tutu, our fact checker. Eugene, good evening.
Yeah, Nana, good evening.
And how are you doing?
Nana, I'm fine.
Great. So what do we have?
Nana, when you go to the numbers, you notice that Ghana's tax to GDP ratio is 12.8%, which is below the World Bank's recommended minimum average of 20% for sustainable development. The average in Europe is 40%. So quite clearly, the government needs to increase taxes to achieve its development and that of the citizenry. And you notice that before even the budget was read, the Minister for Information and other, assigns of government were flying that kite. That indeed we need to, pay more taxes. Now, with the abolishment of road tolls, which in 2016 was deemed as very critical to the raising of funds to fix the roads in Ghana, is being replaced with what we call the Levy, which will take effect on the 1st of February 2022. It is for the telcos or the telecommunication networks to be able to calibrate their platforms to take some of these numbers.
Right.
Also, the e-levy is equally placed on remittances, mobile money transactions, bank transfers, and also ATM withdrawals. Now, when you check the mobile money transactions in 2020, it's hovering around 519 billion cedis from 70 billion in 2017. So clearly, when you do the plus and minuses with the exemptions of about the transactions below 100, and let me state for the record that between 30 to 40% of those transactions of mobile money transactions are less than 100 Ghana cedis, and that is why the government exempted those people, because they think that it's a pro-poor policy to enable to support people. Now the government will raise close to 8 billion cedis, from mobile money transactions alone. Again, when you check the remittances, which was $3.6 billion last year, now into the city equivalent is 22.2 billion cedis, meaning that government will again accrue some dividend from there.
Yeah.
The government will also accrue some dividend from ATM transaction and bank transfer. So when you do the math, we are heading to about 10 billion cedis. Now, when you compare what we get from road tolls, clearly it means that the government has a more sustainable measure here. Whether it's strategic or lazy, I say it's lazy because these are low-hanging fruits. And now, before I end, I will show you why I think it's lazy. Now, if you check the graph on our Facebook, you'll notice that these are the cost of government flagship programs. Now, when you sum it, when you go to the Office of Government Machinery, we are budgeting 1.9 billion for them. When you come to Nation Builders called NAPCO, which has been placed under the U-Start, we are also giving them 520 million. When you go to the National Identification Authority, there's 200 million. Now, when you come to a place like 1D1F, 216 million. When you come to road infrastructure, 1.73 billion cedis. And this is where Ashanti region people will be laughing, whether indeed the interchanges that have been promised will be realized. Now, FSHS is hovering around 2.3 billion. Teacher trading allowances and all that. Now, when you sum all these thematic areas government want to, work on, which are the flagship areas, you come to about $9 billion. 9 billion cedis. So you notice that when you add the dividend government is getting from Momo transactions, remittances, ATM withdrawals, and bank transfers, clearly the government can even fund its flagship programs with those monies alone when it comes or when it kickstarts in February 2022. Now, before I end, I just want to show alternatives that government can be able to get some of these monies. Now, one such alternative, though long term, is coconut. I think that our overfixation on the traditional cash crops must cease, and a new focus shifted to cash crops that grow so well in at least 4 regions I know in Ghana: the eastern region, the central region, the Volta region, even parts of the Ashanti region. And I'm talking about coconut. When you go to the Business Wire report, you notice that countries like Philippines, Indonesia, and India are raking in billions of dollars when it comes to coconut. Now, you'll be amazed to notice that when you go to the Philippines, they are getting, the Philippines alone is getting some $10 billion from coconut. India is also raking in about 6.7 billion. Now, when it comes to the Indonesia, they're also getting about 4.5 billion from coconut. So it means that if the government also focuses attention on some of these alternatives other than the traditional cash crops, cocoa, cashew, and all that, we can be able to rake in more capital because you have the arable lands and all that. Then we shouldn't always target the low-hanging fruit, such as mobile money and also petroleum products.
Thank you very much. Eugene Osei Tutu is our fact checker and also giving alternative to how we will be able to look at other opportunities other than taxing. So let me engage my first guests online now, Dr. DeGraaf Ken, West Senior Lecturer, Statistics. Doc, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us once again on Decision Point. So what would be your general impression about the budget that was read yesterday?
Well, good evening. And good evening to our cherished listeners and those watching us on Facebook as well. My general impression about the budget that was read yesterday, I would say that I'm indifferent because the kind of things I was expecting and then the kind of things that I do know, some of them just reflected on it. It was expected. One thing that is also clear is that I was expecting maybe some more addition of taxes, but it couldn't reach out to that level. I know there was a lot of consideration, testing waters and so on and so forth, to know whether some taxes will be accepted by the people or not. So, in all, I would say that I'm not that much, it's not that much of a surprise to me about the budget that has been read. It was something that those of us who follow the numbers and the figures and looking at our state of affairs and the things that's going on will always be expected. So that's nothing different.
Interesting. So back to our question for the day. Is government being lazy or strategic?
Definitely, as I've been saying over the years on your sister stations and so on and so forth, I have never been a person who is comfortable using the word lazy when it comes to description of tax, even though the government in power use it and justify it. So I've always been saying that practicality and book are not the same, because when you are right there and then you are in the middle of the playing field, you see that not everything that you say when you are right at the outline is much more appreciable or something that is accepted. I will use it as something that lacks long-term initiative and is a low-hanging fruit that everybody or every government would like to pick. But as to describe it as a lazy, I will describe it as more of like a low-hanging fruit which doesn't require much of a thinking to do so. So that is how the description will go. But if you look at it critically, I'm not expecting anything different, but it's also going to be in a long way put a lot of pressure on people. Because a lot of the things that I saw when I was reading the budget, and I've been going through the document over a few couple of hours from yesterday up to today, is that most of the new taxes that have been introduced comes with the remark as TBD, means to be decided later. Because mostly the taxes that I do see do have something like an expiry date. So by expiry date, it's supposed to go off, and maybe government one way or the other will extend it some way, somehow. But this one, I did not see a specific date whereby those new taxes which have been introduced is going to figure out. It didn't happen that way.
Now, this is where I come in again. If you listen to this very government in opposition, their tonation depicted a government in the future that would move away from excessive taxation on citizens to production. And now government is justifying why they need to tax. What does it mean?
Definitely, this is not something that anyone is expecting of this government. Looking at their rhetoric and the kind of statements that were made, the confidence that were put into those statements, and the justification, and all the economic theories that you can think of in this particular world. And for them to be in power and then see exactly the same playbook template which has been copied and being reused, but unfortunately trying to come up with a different story is something that majority of Ghanaians are not expecting. But one thing is clear, when it comes to managing affairs of developing countries like us, we've always said that you need a deliberate attempt in order to make sure that our economic well-being and our economic standing becomes good in order for us or for the people to live a very comfortable life. These are the things that were promised to us by the government when they were in opposition, and we bought so much into this, and we think that it will be a reality. Now, if you look at the budget statement that was read midway 2017 by the finance minister, there was so much hope in that kind of budget because there was some form of cancellation and so on and so forth. But what government failed to do was to check its spending. So it spent so much, and it had a bloated government with more than 125 ministers being paid all sort of things. And when the issues were put to them, we were told that we have to wait to see at the end of the 4 years the work that they are doing because they have so much at their hands to fulfill. And at the end of the 4 years, the government came to the realization that it wasn't something sustainable, so it pushed it away, even though now we still have problems with the number of presidential staffers, number of assistants, PAs, number of ministers, those have state, and other ministries as well. So government has to come up with some taxes. If you read from the 2018 budget up to now, we have a lot of budgets, a lot of taxes which have been introduced, and we have some taxes that were supposed to expire in 2017 but government has revamped these taxes and given it indefinite, and some has been extended 15 years time, which has contributed to the worsened financial situation in the country, because a lot of people are not actually enjoying what they're supposed to enjoy, and it keeps on adding up new taxes and so on and so forth. So there is a need for us to do a critical thinking about how we are managing the country, because we cannot go on a high expenditure level, which mostly doesn't contribute to the economic growth of the country, and then saddle the people down there with various taxes that continue to make their case worse off. But since 1992, that some of us started following politics, it seems that whenever it is time for whenever it's time for budget to be read to Ghanaians, there is this kind of tension and uneasiness, because we've had that kind of trend that whenever budget is being read to the people, we have life and if market is going to be a little bit expensive and going to drain our pockets. That is a scenario that is hard. And we are not expecting government, especially this government, to follow that suit at all. So a bit disappointing to do, but looking at our financial standing, I think they could have done better by introducing more taxes later on. But from 2020, 2021 up to 2022, some of the projection actually shows us that it's going to be up to 2023. Taxes will be there, and we should expect them.
Please stay on the line and let me engage Mr. Newlove Gordon Asamoah, Executive Director, Center for Economic and Business Research. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us once again on Decision Point. So I earlier asked Dr. DeGraff what his reaction will be regarding the budget that was read. What would be yours before I ask whether the revenue mobilization is a lazy man approach or very strategic?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. To be honest, I had a mixed reaction when the budget was read, because some of us were expecting that, looking at the number of taxes and the fuel prices, it was more than 50% taxes when you look at the ESCOM price. So we were hoping that some of the taxes would be taken out, and then the petrol price would come down a little, because it has a lot of impact on the economy when it comes to businesses, transportation, cutting of food crops to the urban centers, and every aspect of our daily lives. So that was what some of us were hoping for. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way, but not many taxes were introduced also. But then the one that was introduced has a very interesting impact on the life of the people. And then also one other area that was very critical, that I was thinking that the government should do a lot of consultation before touching, was the benchmark, the 50% benchmark that was removed. I was thinking that Ghana imports a lot of goods, and it came as a tussle between the AGI and then the GUTA. Whilst AGI wanted the government to remove those benchmarks so that the Ghanaian goods that are being produced to be competitive, the GUTA were arguing that AGI is not able to provide all the things that we need, or they cannot produce most of the things that we need. And therefore, if the benchmark was removed, it was going to cause them to pay more, and therefore price of goods to go up. So I was thinking that government was going to engage the two and then find out from AGI what are the goods that you can produce in what quantity, so that GUTA will also know the quantity to bring in. And therefore, there will be goods that will have the total removal of the benchmark, and there are others that the benchmark will be maintained. I don't know what went on. So for me, those were key decisions that I think is going to have impact on the economy. Assuming the budget is approved, then whatever goods will be brought in by GUTA, they are going to transfer every duty that they pay to the consumer. and the consumer is going to bear all this. So for me, it was a mixed reaction. To some extent, I knew that the government needed money, and government will have to find a way of making that money. But I was expecting that government will balance so that he can meet the citizens halfway for the citizens to make sure that to be able to cater for some of the things that they'll be complaining about. For instance, before the budget, the transport unions threatened to go on strike if the government doesn't reduce the taxes on the fuel. And government had to speak to them to suspend it. So going to the budget, we were all hoping that some levies, like the stabilization levy and other things, will be removed. But it didn't go that way. So to some extent, that is why I said I had a mixed reaction.
So, you as an economic researcher, are we saying that our only major option is to use these avenues to raise revenues? Either we are borrowing or we are taxing citizens the more. Is it that we are still not able to understand we have natural resources that can be tapped well, value added, in order to at least ease the burden on citizens? Because we can speak of what is happening in UAE, in Dubai. Some countries are using their resources to do that. From the economic point of view, what is it that is there regarding our resources that we have not been able to tap it well? I am asking this because the president assured us of the resources. So why do we still are limited to the extent that we feel the only option is tap into where people hearts are to rake in revenues for developmental projects?
Nana, the unfortunate truth is that our leaders talk more than action. They talk and they don't believe in those talks, so they don't act accordingly. So they are not committed when it comes to doing the right thing for us to realize the benefits of the natural resources that we have. The president said, yes, it's Picasso from there. All right. And then the vice president said we move from taxation to production. But none of these are happening at the moment because you have a government that said it's going to undertake one district, one factory. And the idea is to expand production base, employ more people, bring more people into the tax bracket, and businesses will be able to function appropriately. Unfortunately, what are the mechanisms that are supposed to be put in place for the businesses to thrive? Government has been doing, so okay, we are partnering with the private sector. We are investing in some existing businesses to expand so that they can employ more. So few monies are being pumped in here and there. But there are basic problems. For instance, if you do planting for food and jobs, and you are running a school feeding program, and you are importing rice to feed the students under the school feeding program, then what are you doing to your planting for food and jobs? The basic thing the government should have done is, okay, I'm going to use the government purchasing power to make sure that we have large-scale rice farming, large-scale maize farming, etc., so that all students, all schools in Ghana are going to eat made in Ghana rice. So farmers, we are going to get the land for you. We're going to prepare, get the irrigation facilities for you because government also promised they're going to do one village, one dam for irrigation. If that happens, then you're able to produce more. And for you to produce more, you have to employ more people. So that also generates employment. That is when you can say that you are walking the talk that you are talking. But unfortunately, they are doing free SHS, school feeding, and most of the rice that they are using are imported. Even the beans, most of the beans are from Burkina Faso and Togo and Ivory Coast. So we are talking, but we are not making the action to back our talk so that we can realize the benefit of it. That is our problem. And then government has to run the country. So he looks at the places where he thinks that it's easy to get taxes, to get people to pay taxes. If the tax revenue is not enough, what can I do? He goes to the international market and domestic market to borrow. So our debt burden keeps going up and up and up. At the moment, we are hovering around 341.76 billion. By the end of the year, probably I will not be surprised if we hit about 360 billion cedis. So, Nana, that is how the country is being run now. Our leaders are not committed to the basic principles of development that they have read, that they have witnessed other countries do.
But Mr. Newlove, very sorry I had to cut in. How long should we go? I mean, we don't have a good leader. We need leadership. The last time I heard that was 20 years ago. If we are still talking about we need a good leader to change the face of Ghana, to do something differently, how long can we go to get that leader? Because we are still talking about leadership here. Whilst we know that Ghanaians voted for leaders, so we are still saying we don't have leaders to think. Is that the analogy?
At the time Ghana was trying to get into lower middle income countries like Rwanda were going through war. But today, this current president had to send people to Rwanda to go and study their model of development. And it tells you the kind of leaders that we have had over our period. If Ghana, which hasn't gone through any war with all these resources available at our disposal, we have to send people to Rwanda to go and study their model. Post-war Rwanda now is the model of Africa. It tells you the kind of leadership that they have. And some of the leaders who went to Rwanda will tell you that there are things that you cannot do in Rwanda. There are things that are invested in the government, and government makes sure that things are done properly. Wastages are removed, resources are properly utilized, and citizens are not treated as second-class citizens, but opportunities are offered to everyone who cares to do anything meaningful. Unfortunately, in our part of the world, things do not happen that way. So, unfortunately, we keep talking about leadership because if we have all these resources and government is the one in charge of the resources, then we cannot blame any other person than the leader.
Thank you. Please hold on because we'll be conversing more. Dr. de Graaf, very sorry, I know you are into academia, but I just needed to refer. I mean, you have taught us something called literature review, so I'm just referring. In 2015, 2nd December, this was what Dr. Mahamadou Bawumia said. NDC has resorted to increasing taxes under economic difficulties they created. And an MPP government will do differently. I repeat, this was 2nd December 2015. NDC has resorted to increasing taxes under the economic difficulties they created. An MPP government would do differently. What's your understanding of something different, sir?
The taxes you are referring to here are the 5% National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, which was to expire in 2017, but this government has extended it indefinitely. 2% component of the special import levy, and it has extended also. It was supposed to end 2017, and then ESLA has also been extended for another 15 years. These are the taxes that actually made the vice president to say so. But for you to say differently means I'm expecting, as my colleague said, that we are coming up with policies and deliberate actions to make sure that our dependence on some of these taxes, which are low-hanging fruit taxes and which bring burdens to the people, will be a thing of the past, so that we can either expand our income tax bracket and widen it up to flow in more money, or we can specifically grow up the economy in such a way that there will be more income available to the people, and that one will translate into paying of taxes, either through direct or indirect taxes or direct one on goods, income taxes, and so on and so forth. Those were the ones that we expected to see. But we've not had the opportunity to witness that. All what we had is actually a rhetoric which keeps on coming, talking about things that doesn't exist, and then things we should look out for which doesn't materialize. It's a problem to us. And the previous rhetoric is what has made this quite a very big issue. Now, let me be fair. We are in economic crisis. This crisis is man-made. We made it ourselves because we spent so much on the election that blown up our physical space, that we don't have any more area to turn ourselves within the physical space. So we need to come up with something that can help us to decline our borrowing rate that we are having it on the international market. As the tax and then the budget was ready yesterday, our bond values are being shared off by those who hold our bonds in the international market, because they still don't believe that we can make up the 50% revenue that we promised. So it is going to increase our borrowing rate on the international market. I think Brad Sampson have shared news about this today, this afternoon. And we've seen the impact that is having, even though we hear, we think that we are still having so much tax being added onto us. Those who are giving us money think that the revenue that we are going to collect is not even enough. So the kind of confidence that we have in us, in holding our bonds at the Euro bond market, is going down. These are things that we've done it ourselves. These are economic management that you cannot ascribe it to COVID, because it has been over there, over the years, our excessive borrowing and our appetite for spending excessively without a corresponding increase in the economy and expansion in the economy is what has led us to this situation. But there is a good news. You stated this, but there's a good news. What is the good news? Budget statements are statements to the people of Ghana through the Parliament of Ghana. We can reject it through our members of Parliament. Now, let's talk. What's the duty of the 137, 137? Let's see how they pan out. Let's see how they negotiate throughout to see which part should be rejected and which part should be accepted. All previous years, what we've seen is that because we have government having majority in Parliament, it is like every budget statement that will be read on the floor of Parliament will be wholly or somehow been approved. Now we have 137, 137. Let's put this into test. Let's see how they are going to negotiate. What are some of these taxes that are being described by the opposition as unfair or unwelcome, and by majority of Ghanaians also hold the same fact, will be accepted or not be accepted? Because if they feel so, then I'm expecting some of these things should be thrown out of Parliament and should not be accepted, so that we, the Ghanaians, will have confidence in our Parliament as an institution, that it is a place that not every government statement or every government wish will have its reality. Now, if we hold on to our Parliament and tell them, now is the time for us to see the importance of the 137, 137. Which of these do you think is not necessary that we have to pass, and government has to go back and then reevaluate it and come back with something more appropriately that will decrease the burden on the people? Then we will have the confidence to say that we have a good balanced members of Parliament. So let's see how that one will pan out.
All right.
Though we couldn't have that one last year, but let's see what's going to happen this year.
Okay. Hold on. Let me connect Evans Nunu, a business consultant, also on economics. Mr. Nunu, thank you very much. So your brothers are on the line, Dr. De Graft and Mr. Newlove. We are discussing Ghana. I'm sure that it's about the budget. I want to ask you, now from 122 billion cedis in 2016, I'm talking about our debt level. Ghana, as we speak, our debt level is around 341.6 billion. That's 219 billion cedis addition And this one was under this regime. Let me play once more time what the current vice president said regarding how businesses are being overburdened with taxes and the fact that if we don't take care, we'll be chasing taxes and killing businesses. You as a business consultant, after this, I'll ask you whether these taxes and these strategies and policies by this government are rather helping businesses or collapsing it.
This is the goal that we are going to try to do, the most people-friendly and the most business-friendly. The tax issue is a major issue because if you are so, fixated on revenue, you will essentially end up hurting your production. And so if you go back into history, you study the economic history of United States, Germany, England, all of them have used the tax policy to encourage production. And this is why we are saying that, today you have a situation in Ghana, unbelievable situation, when businesses are out on strike. Businesses who should be selling are out on strike. Why are they out on strike? Because they've been overburdened by taxes. And if you don't take care, you'll be chasing the tax revenue and killing businesses. And when you kill businesses, it means you are causing unemployment. And so if you go back, this is why Nana KWADWO is saying, we need to mobilize financial resources. So why are you going to be imposing VAT on financial services? It doesn't make sense in a country which has got a very large unbanked population and we want people to bank. We will abolish that, he says. We will abolish import duty on all raw materials because that has been a policy that will help production. Let the businesses produce. Let them make profit. And when they make profit and employ people, we will get income taxes and we will get corporate taxes. So you don't go ahead to kill the business. No, let them bring in the raw materials. Let them produce. Then you will tax, at the end of the day. And so our approach, and this is why we are going to bring down corporate taxes, we'll put incentives for real estate, tax incentives for the real estate sector, the special import levy on imports, the 1 to 2%, we will abolish it. And this.
Mr. Nunu, your reaction and then the budgets in general.
All right. Thank you so much. I want to say a very good evening to your cherished listeners, and I want to say hi to my colleagues on the other side of the line. Thank you very much for this great privilege. I must say that, let me start from my view on the budget in general, and then I will narrow it down to the issue of taxation. I must say that we seem to be a bit realistic with our target this time around. That is, those things we seek to achieve, as much as I can recall, our primary surplus is 1%. And then we are targeting growth rate of 5.something%. These are achievable. I think inflation is around 8% thereabouts. That is okay. But I must say that our deficit is still high. We are having to run a deficit budget of 7.4% of GDP. And I think that is very high given our debt levels, as you are aware. Even last year, December, we were 76.1%. By the close of, by the third quarter of this year, we are having to talk about 77% thereabouts. That is huge. Now, we are going to finance deficits. And how are we going to do that? How strategic can we be? Is that not going to add to our debt tools? Because once we are seeking to run a deficit budget, it is the meaning is that our expenditure will be higher than revenue. That is what we foresee, and that is working. Because anywhere we tend to, because of our huge debt, if we try to go foreign, our foreign debt is something else. And if we try to borrow from the domestic market, our private sector will be choked. And so what do? We are in a very hard situation. Now, I'm sure it is for that reason we are having to talk about taxes. Because it is becoming almost like a disease. to us. Every budget, we have to introduce new tax. I don't know what we are attempting to do with our budget. Some time ago, when we were young, our parents were worried anytime Honorable Kosiboche was about to read the budget because new taxes will be announced. For some time, it relaxed, but it seems it is being resurrected because almost every tax, almost every budget, we hear of new taxes. And I think that is worrying, especially given the fact that our businesses have suffered from COVID-19. People have been laid off, and we are even talking about entrepreneurial state. The finance minister says that Ghana should be an entrepreneurial state. If that is what we are talking about, and we are crippling businesses with heinous taxes, then it's something else. I'm not too sure we are doing the right thing. And more so, we are contracting the economy with these taxes. With the Momo tax, people have been making noise about, or have been talking about. You see, the government had always talked about broadening the tax base, and I'm sure that is the reason they introduced this tax. The idea and the concept, I don't really have a serious problem with it, but my problem is with the margin, because you would agree with me, those who say that this tax is a bit retrogressive, they have a point, because we are going to tax the people we usually call the ordinary Ghanaians, meaning those are not the people we will call affluent. We are going to tax them. If it is for want of broadening the tax base, I think that the margin is just too high. We could have done some 0.5% for starters, and people are going to pay that without even feeling it. And because it has that broad base, when you put everything together, we will have something to go home with. But to start with 1.7 thereabout, I think it's something huge. And if we don't take time, we will scare people away from formalizing our system through that Momo concept. And I think that is my problem, the problem I have with it. And I also think that Ghana must find ways of bridging the gap between the rich and the poor. And I think that we could have used a toll system to do that. Why am I saying that? I think that we shouldn't have totally eliminated the tolls. Which we could have taken toll from the private cars, the Land Cruisers, the Range Rovers, and the rest. We could have exempted the commercial vehicles and taken from the private cars. That could have helped to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. And there is this concept. I thought the government would try and enforce it properly to see how much we will fare before introducing fresh taxes. That is the revenue assurance and compliance enforcement rate. Not too long ago, the government launched rate, and that is supposed to monitor the revenue system and to block loopholes therein. How much are we faring on that? If we are seeking to block the loopholes, why didn't we do that properly to see if our revenue levels will go up? If that is well done, that is done properly, and we are able to block loopholes and get higher revenue, maybe we wouldn't have introduced this Momo tax and probably wouldn't have raised the levels to these margins. So I think that we did not handle it properly. And if there is a way Parliament could force the government to do something about it, that would be laudable.
Now, I know that you as an economist, and I'll ask the same thing to you, Mr. Newlove, but Mr. Nunu, help me. You are an economist, and it does appear Dr. Baumia spoke economically. I mean, people believe in the things that could work in an economy. I mean, we believe in your words. It was clear that at that time, businesses were suffering, and now businesses are still suffering. And at that time, even though businesses were suffering, the government was still taxing us, and people complained. And now that businesses are suffering, government is still taxing. But in opposition, people expected that creating an enabling environment for businesses will be something of a priority to this government. As a business consultant, is the environment enabling for businesses?
For now, I don't think that we've created much enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. Look, I have said that between January and June this year, government had borrowed 7.1 million Ghana cedis from the domestic market. So if the government is competing with the private sector to this tune, how do we expect the private sector to play that role for Ghana to be shot into an entrepreneurial state? That notwithstanding, look at how we distribute our expenditure. Now, we have been told that the NAPCO guys will go back. Have we created meaningful jobs for them to do? Have we laid the foundation well for them to be on board? Or we are just telling people to go to where they will not find jobs to do, and then we pretend to be paying them? Look, Dr. Baumia might have made the right statement in opposition, but let's remember that it's a whole machinery, government machinery, and he's just a very negligible portion of that. Now, our politicians act for want of votes. They don't act in a way that will help the country in the long run. They are only seeking to be voted into power. They seek to maintain power. And so if they will do something that will make them popular in the meantime, but will ruin the future of the country in the long run, that is almost none of their business. But we have a duty, and we have every reason to make things right, but by complaining and by asking our parliamentarians to do the right thing.
Mr. Newlove, I am asking you the same question because, I mean, you are the economics. You are telling us what we need to do, and clearly we have not studied economics into that level that you have been exposed to, but basic economy or economics would tell you that when you create that enabling environment, when you reduce the tax burden on the employer will be able to expand the business, employ more people, which will also reduce the burden of unemployment in the system. These are the things that are expected of any government. Based on what we have understood, what should we expect in the next year or two based on this budget?
Well, Nana, you see, when the foundation is not strong or is not well laid, the building is always shaky. And then when the building is shaky, you do what we call panic reaction. So you played an audio by Dr. Baumia, December 2, 2016, thereabout. And that was a perfect economics that he spoke. But you see, like they said, the day of planning is different from the day of battle. Sometimes when you are in the opposition, you see things better. And if you remember, Mahama said, you have not become president before, so you cannot criticize because you don't know what it takes to be a president. So when they are in opposition, they see the right thing, they come to power. Doing the right thing becomes a problem. And that is because the foundation is very weak and none of them is willing to relay the foundation. So the president will come and talk about Ghana Beyond Aid, but it's not able to produce a proper policy document that demonstrates the role of the government, the role of the private sector, the role of the individual, the role of various people and what they can do, and within what time frame can Ghana become without aid. None of that, but he has just said it. So give yourself 10 years, Ghana will still be the same way we are now. So these are the problems that we are having.
Interesting.
Now, yes. Now looking at the budget in the next 2 years, what is the government doing to enable the businesses to thrive? That is what we have to look at. And you see, there's one thing that the minister said that made me sad, that the tax revenue that we get as a country, Greater Accra alone brings in 90%. So the rest of Ghana brings in just 10%. So the whole economy of Ghana is in the hands of Greater Accra. So if Greater Accra collapses, Ghana as a country collapses. And I ask myself, what has the government done to make sure that industries are spread out across the country? Job creation are spread out across the country. What are the incentives? So in the next 2 years, if we want to move from where we are, the government should be able to give incentives to others to go to other regions, to go to the hinterland. We produce cocoa, especially also, especially Javoso. We go to Akomadan, we produce tomato, we go to the northern region, yam, beans, and others. What incentives are the government putting in place to make sure that people are processing those produce that they are producing that can add more value to the raw material that we produce so that they can also earn a living and stop coming to Accra? People will just get up, take their bags, and go to Accra to look for jobs. Some do not get, and create congestion in Accra.
Right.
All government institutions are in Accra. If you are looking for any license, you have to go to Accra. So there's a lot of frustration for those outside Accra doing businesses as well. So everybody ends up in Accra.
Okay.
So all the other regions, their economies are being collapsed. So government needs to make a deliberate policy to make sure that development in terms of industries, in terms of employment, in terms of job creation, are evenly spread out across the country.
Okay.
Other than that, we'll be talking about the same situation.
Okay.
And so, because the industries are not well spread and are not well developed, government needs money and it has to find a way of getting money. And that is why they're taking the low-hanging fruit, knowing that, well, if the industries, if people are not working, the minister was talking about 2.3% people paying taxes. Because most people are not working. How do they tax when it's not working? So they said that, okay, for mobile money, everybody has, you have over 41 million mobile subscribers, and last year, transaction over 100 billion passed through mobile money. So if you place in 1% tax, we make a lot of revenue there without doing anything.
Okay.
So these are some of the things that will happen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Dr. DeGraft, I will give you just 30 seconds to wrap up. So what's the way forward? Any expectation, any hope?
For now, I would say there's no hope because we are expecting the hope to come from a yearly plan of the budget regime so that we see a new ways of expanding our tax without necessarily have to burden the existing people who are there. For me, I disagree completely with the electronic levy because it's going to affect the vulnerable in the society much more. And then all the assumptions, all the jargon that we've used in order to justify that does not hold water in my view. On the other hand, I also believe that government has to get a needed revenue, but the approach that they are using is what I disagree with, looking at all the rhetoric that they used prior to election 2016.
All right.
I think they've been in government for 5 years now. They should be able to come up with some of the innovative ways for us to come up with a very direct way of collecting taxes from the people and expand the tax bracket. Because just like my colleague said, if you have Greater Accra contributing approximately 90% of all of our tax revenue, then what happens to the other regions? It means that there's more inefficiencies in the region that government has to close the loopholes in order to bring back all those taxes back into the coffers of Ghana. As well as they have to deal with the lucrative tax breaks that we give to multinational companies that Ghanaians don't have.
Right.
So that need them to repatriate the money back into their home countries. We can deal with all these loopholes, and then we can close the gap and make us have a very high revenue, and then decrease the burden and all these taxes that we are introducing on the vulnerable within the society. So I'm quite not happy with the introduction of green taxes, but yet government also needs more.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Nunu, 10 seconds. Any hope for us?
Yes, I think that we have before us a very hard nut to crack. It's a hard way ahead. So we expect our managers to think beyond the box. But Nana, let me quickly correct this thing. You see, all the oil marketing companies, all the big companies have their head offices in Accra, and they pay taxes in Accra. It doesn't mean that the taxes for Accra. For records and for data purposes, it will be accurate to say Accra paid, but we all pay. So though 90% is coming from Accra, it doesn't mean that the money is only from Accra. It is from across the country. The only issue is that the head offices are located in Accra, and they pay the tax in the name of these companies. Let us all do our part to contribute to the betterment of Ghana, but we task and charge our politicians to think beyond the box.
All right. I want to thank, gentlemen, thank you very much for your input tonight. Mr. Newlove, thank you. Dr. DeGraff, thank you. Mr. Nunu, thank you. So the lines are active. Decision point. What will be your decision? Call me and let's talk. 03220-835-96. 03220-835-97. And 03220-835-98. The 2022 budget and government revenue mobilization. Do you call this a lazy man approach or very strategic? Call me 03220-835-96, 835-97, This is Decision Point. Good evening.
Good evening, Nana.
Yes, how are you, sir?
I'm good, and you?
I'm fine. Your name?
My name is Kwekwa Sampana.
All right, Kwaku, you are there.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your resource persons' dedication they have been able to give us this evening. I want to say that we have nowhere going. The only place we have is this country. And if Ghana will move forward, we need to pay taxes. And I must emphasize on that. But, you don't bring taxes that will cripple people's business down. They have been doing this for far too long. And it's time we look them in the face and tell them that they cannot take us for a ride. They have been doing this. And I wonder what will be going through the mind of the acting president, His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, right now. You see, politics without principle is nothing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Paul, hello? Okay, Paul? Hello, Paul? Okay, so who is on the line? Kwamina? Hello? Wow. Okay, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Please, your name?
Political thinker.
Okay, political thinker. All right, make it snappy.
Pardon?
Please make it snappy. You're on air. Decision point.
Okay. Tell me, bro, I think you have said it all. In fact, tax is something that we use to build a country. So, and currently, if the government want to widen the tax net and he want to pass it through MK, I think it's
Oh, too bad. Hello, Samuel.
Hello, good evening.
All right, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good. I hope you are good as well.
I am. Please make your point. Decision point.
Thank you. Well, let me find out. I didn't listen to the finance minister when he was presenting the budget. Is it true that the finance minister made mention that 5 interchanges are going to be constructed in Kumasi 2022? I just want to find out that.
He mentioned 5, but 3 had been captured in the budget.
Okay. So in 2022, 3 will be tackled.
Well, that's what we have read.
Okay. Well, what I want to say is that your guest who was on the line made mention of that when they are in opposition, they speak the truth about our economy. And you can understand that their understanding of economics and management of the economy in opposition is very good. But when they assume power, things get out of hands quickly. And this is the kind of example we are seeing under NPP government. And it happens to all political parties all year round.
All right.
But my point is, you see, we have come to understand that the revenue that we generate, almost 90% is used to pay our public sector workers. And we are left to go and borrow to manage our economy. So if governments fail to initiate new taxes that will bring in more revenue, then the developments that we expect government to undertake, we cannot get them to. So to me, when government introduces taxes, although it may appear harsh to the citizens, but it is the same citizens who will say to the government that you've done nothing. Why do you expect the government to get money to start the projects that you are looking for, the hospitals, the roads, the rail sector, and all the development projects? It is through taxes.
All right.
But
all right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I'm fine. Please make your point.
You know, this government is the most useless government ever.
No, please hold on.
Look,
no, be
you,
decorum, please. I beg you.
Which country in the world do they not have toll booths that take, toll fees from drivers? Which country? Tell me. Which country in the world does not have toll booths that take toll from vehicles? Tell me. The most important thing is for you to reduce or to remove the taxes from the fuel. That's the basic thing that you have to do. Why are we behaving as if we've not even set our foot in school? What is this? The basic thing is for you to reduce fuel for drivers, not to stop taking tolls from drivers. That's
all right.
The basic thing.
Thank you.
It's the most useless government ever.
Hold on. Hello, good evening.
Mr. Paul from Alberta.
All right, please make your point.
There's one thing I want you to cross-check for me, please. Check next week, maybe you bring the whole of Africa, the oil-producing nation. What is the rate of petrol per liter in those countries in Africa? Then another thing is for only God promise and do his promise. Nana Akufo come with a lot of promise, but things that is in tight corner, like nurses allowance, teachers allowance, free education, you should revise it because he spend a lot of money. So if you do this, the pressure will be less. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Ahmed, good evening. Hello.
Hi.
Yes, who is on the line?
Yeah,
hello.
So I want to put my message, bro.
Okay. Hello, Ahmed.
Hello.
You're on air. Decision point.
Yeah. My brother, how are you doing?
I am fine, and you?
Oh, by the grace of Almighty Allah. Only that things are not in peace. I'm a taxi driver. When I go out, fuel takes everything. Fuel takes everything. Look, I have to buy 100 Ghana cedis. If I go to work, before I come back, at least I get around 160 Ghana cedis. If I minus the petrol, that will 60 cedis. And then the car owner will take 50 Ghana cedis. And then I will take 10 cedis to their house. What they are doing, this government is very, very bad. Dr. Bamia made us to understand that he knows economics more than anybody in Ghana. But look at what they are doing. They are messing everything. They are messing, they are just destroying the country. They are not doing well at all. We have to vote them out. We have to vote them out come 2024. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Is that Samuel?
Yes.
All right, Samuel, decision point.
Yeah. So, what happened to the nice talks and the lectures that were given by Dr. Bawumia from taxation to production? What has become of it? So all of a sudden, people are now realizing that we cannot develop without taxes. You can't. I can't believe this. Now it is very painful. The way Bawumia deceived Ghanaians, he made us to understand that he was the economic messiah who was coming to save this country. And look at what they are doing. When you consider the bench mark, whatever they are talking about, it should have been some selected goods, not just all goods. At least they should have identified goods which are produced locally. Then they can put the taxes on those goods in order to raise the prices of the imported goods so that people will patronize the local goods. But you don't just do it just bluntly like that. How are we going to manage? Oh, Nana, it's too much.
Richmond, end with us.
Hello, Nana. Good evening.
Good evening, Richmond.
So we are talking of how the country is in an economic crisis. There is something called signaling. That is where the leaders, the parliament, and the executive body, they scrap some of the allowances that they are taking. You see, we are talking of widening the tax nets. Why can't they, scrap some of the allowances or some of their ex-gracias or those things so that they will signal to us that they are, in fact, leading the country, but rather always increasing taxes and bringing in new taxes on all sort of those things.
Thank you. I want to say thank you very much for your contributions. We appreciate it. I want to thank Dr. De Graaf from KNUST, Mr. Evans Nunu, and Mr. Newlove. Thank you very much. Callers, we appreciate it. I want to thank my executive producer, DJ Apuzo, and Mr. Jimmy Agla, the general manager. Thank you, Eugene Osei-Tutu, and to our social media guru, Joel. My name is Nana Jantuah. This has been Decision Point. The Hook is up next. Good evening.
Something new is coming.
It's exciting.